Hi, I'm Deana Rohlinger, Associate Dean in the College of Social Sciences and Public Policy. I'm the Associate Dean for Faculty Development and Community Engagement, and I'm so excited that I am here with Dr. Nagar. She is one of our award winners in the College of Social Sciences and Public Policy for teaching. Congratulations on your award.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm so glad that you're taking time to answer a few questions, and let's just jump right in. So just tell me a little bit about how you approach teaching.
It's kind of a process that includes different components, right? So usually I start with what it is I'm trying to convey to students, and usually I have this general questions. What did I want them to remember at the end of the semester, right? And that's my starting point, because as I tell them, 99% of it they will forget. So what it is I do want to stay with them, and I build around that, the scope of the material, and then how I organize it in a logical manner. And that's pretty much the starting point, right? When I have a course and I'm prepping it from the beginning, I'm asking myself this question: what it is that I wanted to stay with them, and then I start building on it, like almost like a tree of I want to cover this and this and this, and this will complement that general goal that I set to myself in the beginning of the semester. And organization matters to me as well, making sure that there's a logic to it, that the student is very much aware of it from the get-go. This is how we're building this. We're putting the foundation to the course in order for you to be able to later on understand better, more complex ideas that we will introduce throughout the semester. And that will be probably my first principle that guides me. And I would say the second one, and some professors definitely disagree with me on this, is objectivity. I teach Middle East politics, I teach terrorism, and as an Israeli, there are certain assumptions that students will make as they enter the classroom. And I want to take away those assumptions and challenge those. And that's why my guiding principle is to maintain objectivity and to present a really balanced perspective if we're talking about U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East, or, we talked about just a minute ago, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I find that through that balanced perspective, I managed to more stimulate critical thinking, because I try to understand throughout the semester what are the misconceptions or what are the dominant opinions, and I make an effort to try to challenge those by presenting a more, again, balanced both sides of the story at the very least, especially again in more complex situations like I've mentioned. Engagement is really important to me as well. My engagement, you have to be enthusiastic about the material that you teach, and you have to be enthusiastic about the method through which you deliver it, right? So I every time I get feedback that I seem to be passionate about what it is that I teach, I'm like, okay, success, because I brought that enthusiasm to the classroom. But then I also demand that engagement from my students. I want them to be equally passionate and excited about the material that we cover. I can't say that it always happens, of course, but I purposefully will use tools to get students engaged in this classroom, if it's discussions, the games that we play, or the simulations that we conduct. Empathy is important to me, and it's getting to be more and more difficult as the age gap is increasing between me and students, but to realize that they do have their own struggles and challenges, and to try to accommodate those in the best possible way, but maintaining fairness. This is another guiding principle. I have to be fair to all students in the way that I approach the course requirements. So, combining this empathy with fairness is important to me. And I would finish with reflection. I constantly reflect. I mentioned this in my application to the award, that I constantly reflect of what it is I can do to improve the class, and I keep class diaries regularly. And I at the end of class, I will put a comment: this worked well, this really didn't work, maybe consider changing this. If it's the assignment, if it's how I presented the material, if it's a certain clip that I've used, and then it allows me, when I start a new semester of the same class, to review those notes that I wrote to myself and say, okay, these are changes that I want to make, and maybe these are changes that I'm still not willing to make, but at least it allows me to make those reflections.
No, that's really funny. I'll do that in my syllabus. I'll say, yeah, that example bomb. But it's true. Sometimes, even if it's like the spinach, right, of a class, like
Yeah.
you may not want that spinach, but you still need this particular spinach is going to be good for your intellectual development.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And classes will change, right? So certain group of students, things will work, and then you do it the next semester and it does not work. But at the very least, by maintaining that diary, it allows me to think about it again and say, okay, am I keeping the spinach or am I throwing it away?
That's right.
Yeah.
So how do you develop this approach?
I would say lots of trial and error, because I have lots of experience with public speaking and the profession of teaching. I started as a scout leader. They call it here in the United States. In Israel, it's a little bit different. You become a scout leader practically when you enter high school. And that was the first time when I started teaching younger kids in the scouts. And then in the military, I was also an instructor, on rescue instructor in the IDF. And then I taught soldiers in the IDF how to teach. So it was from building curriculum to how to perform in the classroom to keep your student engaged, to how to develop some assessment tools to make sure that your students understood your material. And that was, my last year in the military. That's all I've done. And then, moving on, I just continued working in some form of an instructive role even before I did my undergrad. So the transition to teaching was fairly natural to me. And there was, again, a lot of trial and error then.
Wow, so I didn't know that about you. That's so interesting that you have such a unique history with teaching, an extensive history with teaching. So what does this mean for how you evaluate students? I mean, we often think about, oh, well, evaluations or grades, but that's not true for most professors, right? We have a more nuanced way of understanding grading. So how do you approach it? How do you know when students are getting what you want out of your class?
I would say it depends on the level of the course. Unfortunately, being a big public university, I think I use a fairly traditional tools in the large class. When I do teach INS 3003 and there are 200 students in the classroom, there's not a lot of options there for me to be a little bit more creative. But in my elective, if it's the Middle East politics, for example, I think the simulation that summarizes 3 weeks of classes on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict tells me so much more about how much it is that the students have learned than I would any exam that I will give them at the end of those 3 weeks. So for me, a lot of taking the historical material, the theoretical pieces that we read, and asking students to apply it in some way. We do in my political violence class an ethnic conflict simulation. And similarly there, you could see how they get these moment. Oh, that was causes ethnic conflict. And they are, in that particular simulation, they each represent a different party in the conflict. And all of a sudden they want to start to engage in violence, right? And they feel comfortable about, perpetrating fake terrorist attacks. And again, it hits them that the security dilemma that people feel, that potential threat that people feel because of different identities, they apply to themselves and they take on that role, and they far better understand this again than any other exam that I would give them in the classroom. So for me, using some of those alternative tools to assess engagement with course material is very fulfilling to me. At the graduate level, seminars are super easy, right? Because all you got to do is to run a productive discussion and get the students lead the class pretty much with their own reflection or their own feedback on the material that we're reading. And that tells you a lot about how much they've gained from the course. And a lot of group activities I try to implement also at the graduate level, where they get to talk a little bit with each other and learn a lot from each other as well.
Yeah, that's great. So tell me, Naama, what do you like the best about teaching? What's your favorite part?
I'll give you an IDF officer answer. It has 3 pieces to it. Okay, that's you can't let go of your time as being a soldier. The first one are the butterflies that I feel when I start a new semester. I enter the classroom, there's always these nerves, and they're like, oh, they remind me that I'm still alive, that I still care about all of this. And I'm excited about them. They can be scary, but I'm still excited about them. And I do enjoy those. I love it when students engage with me throughout the classroom, if it's discussions, if we have, really stimulating discussions. For me, this is always considered to be a success. And then the occasional email from a student, how are you doing? This is where I'm at in life, especially after they graduate. Continue, if they thank me or they ask me questions about things that are going on in the world. These truly make me feel as if I matter and made an impact on their lives.
Yeah, that's great. So what would be your best piece of advice that you would give a new professor at FSU?
Be open for constructive feedback. Some of the best things that I've implemented in my classrooms came from students. And that's because, and it's not that I enjoy doing midterm evaluations or that I constantly poke them and ask them, what did you think about what we've done here? Because sometimes I do hear criticism, right? And sometimes they're even personal. So it's not like I enjoy to continuously do it, but I learn so much from the students when they provide their feedback. And sometimes that feedback is predictable, right? And and you're going to tell them the load of the reading is going to stay the same. But then you have the occasional comment that gives you the aha moment. Oh my God, why didn't I do it until now? And then you can implement it in the following semester. So being open to it, and I guess, developing some thick skin and embracing it rather than being afraid of it, have taught me a lot about being an instructor at the university.
That's really great advice. Well, thank you and congratulations on your well-deserved award, everyone. Once again, we've had a short chat about teaching with College of Social Science and Public Policy Teaching Award winner, Dr. Deana Nagar. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.